The story started with the hero, Allan unleashing his strongest attack with the holy sword on the monsters he was fighting currently, although unleashing this move consumed a lot of mana. And to solve that, our protagonist Ishua always makes sure to keep reopening the manga of Allan since his job was a mana porter. Ishua not only supported Allan, but also other members of the hero's party, consisting of a magic swordsman, a saint, and a sage. Thanks to Ishua replenishing their mana continuously, they could keep using their strongest attacks without worrying about the drawbacks or excessive mana consumption. And Ishua could even repair the magic sword if needed during the battles. Moreover, he also contributed a lot in the healing part, by transferring the saint with enough holy magic to keep using her healing spells. Ishua was confident they would win, as long as everyone in the party had full mana capacity. He was like an inseparable pillar of support for the whole party, and thanks to him, they always managed to clear whichever quest they accepted. But after a few days, Allan kicked Ishua out of the party out of nowhere. Ishua was shocked by sudden layoff, and he tried to make Allan understand that if he kicked out Ishua, the party's mana would run out fastly and they would suffer. However, Allan never cared to bother checking that out, and he believed the party had never been short of mana in the first place. Ishua tried to reason that they didn't notice because he never made it obvious. But Allan didn't believe him at all, refusing to think a mere mana porter would have that kind of power. Apparently, the main reason why Allan hated Ishua was because he was jealous of all the girls in the party fawning over a useless guy like Ishua. Allan then lied to him that this was a collective decision by the whole party and they don't need Ishua anymore. Ishua found it hard to believe and was hurt, as he was just told to leave like that. After that, Ishua walked away, still feeling all bummed about being kicked out so unexpectedly. He recalled that a mana porter was a job that thrives in a party which consumes a lot of mana. Their role is to provide enough mana to others during the battle. And since they stay in the background most of the time, people often look down on them, just like how Allan didn't think highly of Ishua at all. However, Ishua was still worried about the party, since their party members were a hero, a saint, sage, and a magic swordsman, all of which consumed a lot of mana. Ishua was concerned they wouldn't be able to fight effectively while saving their mana during the battles. But if kicking him out was really everyone's decision, it can't be helped. Right then, Ishua was called out by one of the party members, Arya, calling him senpai, and he didn't expect her to come running to him so uncontrollably like that. She ended up hitting him with her chest at high speed. Ishua kind of missed this sweet scent of a woman. That aside, he asked Arya what she was doing here, but she questioned him just why he abandoned them all of a sudden like that. Saint Arya was used to calling Ishua senpai since she was his junior during their academy days. Ishua asked her why she thought he abandoned them when it was everyone else's decision to expel him in the first place. Arya questioned how that could be when everyone relied on him for mana so much. Ishua told her that's just what Allan told him, hearing which, Arya was so pissed that despite being a saint, she started emitting a dark aura around her, mad about that bratty hero going around causing trouble for her senpai. Ishua was relieved to see Arya understood him and she didn't really want him to leave. Arya stated that she actually came here to take senpai back, but now she decided to just follow him from now on instead. Ishua was shocked to hear that, since he knows it's always been her dream to get into Hero's party. But Arya refused to be in a party with a hero who banished Ishua senpai. She knows he has been helping her since they were students, and it's all thanks to him that she became what she is today. Thus, she requested Ishua to take her along with him. Ishua could sense genuine intentions behind her request, so he agreed to take her along with him. However, he was curious how she managed to find him. Arya stammered, as she replied that she coincidentally happened to have the hair of senpai, which she used for search magic to find him. Ishua was in doubt, was she really a saint since this behavior suits witches who do black magic? Now they kept walking the path, and she asked him what they were going to do now. Ishua was thinking of heading to a nearby town to prepare for their trip, and right then, they came across some people shouting for help. A carriage seemed to have been attacked by some wolf monsters. Ishua decided to help them, and Arya knew he would say so. They jumped into the center and Ishua told Arya to take care of these monsters while he poured mana into her. These wolf demons were B-rank monsters, which were supposed to be difficult for beginners to deal with. But Ishua was calm and relaxed, knowing won't be a match for a saint like Arya. However, Arya seemed to be going overboard with her attack, and actually plans on using a top-tier magic just to deal with these wolves. She even caused multiple enchantments to her attack, so to keep her attack power controlled, Ishua quickly analyzed her magic circles and adjusted the quality of the magic poured into her to make sure her attack won't be too much for the whole area. Once he was done with the countermeasure for her overpower move, Arya released the Innocent Shine attack into the whole area around them. Other people and even monsters looked confusedly at the ray of light, as it shattered and spread into the whole area around them like an explosion. Even the undead monsters, which were hundreds of meters away from them, took the hit by the holy attack of Saint Arya, leading to the purification of the whole path in the range. Once it subsided, Arya chuckled innocently and asked Ishua how her new magic was. Ishua told her she went too far with it, removing impurities around the whole area so much that it literally became a sacred place. She kept giggling, while he hoped she would learn to keep her powers under control and not get overexcited like that. Merchants there wondered who these two were. After that, he guided them to the nearest village, for which Ishua thanked him. The merchant claimed he just wanted to thank them for saving his life, and claimed that it's his first time seeing such powerful magic users, and also someone who could transfer magic so effectively. Arya boasted it could only be done by her senpai, who makes the impossible possible, and even she couldn't activate a spell on that scale on her own. She mentioned that Ishua has a bottomless supply of mana, and he could also understand high-level magic even at first glance and optimize or adjust its power accordingly. He was truly worthy of being called a superhuman. The waitress then brought the Hue nuts, and the merchant told her not to serve unrefined nuts to his lifesavers. She apologized to the boss for that, and mentioned that they were actually running low on mana lately and needed to run the refineries. Ishua asked the man about mana shortage. He replied that since their village was small, they couldn't properly maintain the refineries, let alone farming equipment, which eventually lead to their devices being unproductive and demanding high maintenance costs, which they can't afford. It brought them to a standstill at this point, and if this keeps up, their village might not survive like this. Arya and Ishua looked at each other like they were thinking the same thing. Ishua told the man that he would help them with the mana shortage. The man was feeling sorry to get so much help from Ishua even after being helped by him once already. Arya assured him it was fine, since her senior was a very good-natured person and couldn't leave someone needy without helping them. Ishua went to the refinery and saw they were all in terrible condition. The guy admitted they couldn't keep up with the maintenance for a long time. Ishua observed the refinery from close and figured that he should be able to handle this much. He placed his hands on the tank and began charging it with magic until it filled completely. Everyone was shocked, as they witnessed him filling all the mana containers at once, while it was something that wasn't supposed to be this easy for any human. Ishua also knows that, and he kept practicing to pour mana into non-living objects over time, since he had to take care of his party members' magic sword and other equipment. And while he's at it, Ishua also added some attributes to remove dirt from the containers as well. Once he was done, the whole run-down place transformed into a fully newly built refinery, and the villagers were shocked Ishua didn't just fix or fill the mana containers, but also removed the rust and repaired the weak ends. Ishua also made some additions to make sure it would keep running smoothly for a while, although he still thought he was amateur in this work. But the villagers corrected him. It was far from that, and he did a work which normally would have taken dozens of top engineers. The villagers really wished to know his name, and Ishua introduced himself as a normal mama porter. But the man would believe that he was normal since he witnessed how extraordinary Ishua was with his own eyes. He also asked Arya about her, to which she replied with her name and her job as a saint. She maintained a saint-like aura and a smile while introducing herself. The villager was stunned to hear that, and he came to the conclusion that if Ishua was bringing Saint with him, he must be the hero. He was certain of that fact and apologized for his late gratitude for the hero. Ishua was startled and he tried to ask Arya to assist him in correcting villagers' misunderstanding. Arya was already lost in her own world, thinking she and Senpai would make a perfect match. Ishua wishes she would go back to her normal saint self, but that aside, the villagers already decided to throw a party for the hero who saved their village. Ishua tried to make them understand it's a misunderstanding, which made the villager think the hero was being too modest and might have his own circumstances to hide his situation. They actually admired how the hero wasn't even pretending to be nice, like some scoundrels who would pretend to be heroes to take advantage of them. Ishua just gave up, as villagers won't listen to what he said, then Arya threw herself on him, calling him her hero. Ishua was feeling nervous as she was too close, but she didn't care about it at all, more likely because she was drunk. Ishua also noticed her wasted state and realized she had already started drinking. He told the villagers not to let Arya drink much since she couldn't handle alcohol. But she was already out of savings now. She even tried to kiss Ishua senpai. The celebration went really well for everybody, except poor Ishua. Meanwhile, somewhere else in front of an ranked dungeon, Allan was planning to conquer this dungeon with just the three of them. Mythia and Ritteru, the magic swordsman and sage of the party, thought it would be reckless to go alone in the dungeon without Ishua and Arya. But Allan wanted them to just forget those guys at this point, since he went through the trouble of firing them already. He told them to shut up and follow him, as they would prove they don't need that incompetent Ishua. Mythe and Ritteru had their worries, as they hesitantly followed Allan into the dungeon since he was leader. And this was how the story of a fallen hero and a mana porter, who would later be called a hero, began. Meanwhile, Ishua and Arya took their leave from the Axis village, and the villagers saw them off with warm-hearted smiles. Arya was happy to see the villagers he deserves. She saw Senpai as a hero, and now she asked him where they should head next. Ishua replied he wanted to return his hero's party license first, then register as an adventurer, so for that, he would return to the newcomer town of Norbish. At the same time, Allan was defeating monsters one by one, using his holy sword's powerful moves one after another. He felt confident this dungeon would be a piece of cake even without a mana porter. The guild ranked dungeons in this world from E to SS ranks. Even veterans could be wiped out in a rank dungeons like the one Allan was currently in. Mythia and Ritteru knew this fact, and were on their guards, telling Allan to remain cautious as well and preserve his mana for their return trip, since they don't have Ishua to back them up right now. After hearing Ishua's name being mentioned again, Allan boasted he didn't need him, and they would be nothing but cowards if they ran from this ranked dungeon. He believed mana shortages don't happen that often, but Mythia tried to tell him it was because Ishua never let them feel it, as Ishua believed an ideal mana porter would support the party without even making them aware of the mana consumption. Mythia then dodged an attack from a monster, and pointed out they shouldn't let the monsters surround them. Ritteru the Sage used her magic spells to buff Allan's attacks, which made his attacks strong enough to kill the monsters in one strike. Allan then asked others if they also think their party was overwhelmingly strong, even without Ishua, which means they don't need his help after all. However, Allan then suddenly felt like something was off about their situation. Then he noticed a lizard man show up behind Mythia. He warned her about it, and noticed she wasn't using her magic sword but daggers to fight, despite being a magic sword woman. She reasoned that since they don't have Ishua here, she can't risk running out of mana and need to fight conservatively. Ritteru also mentioned her mana was about to reach the limit, which pissed off Allan, as he can't stand the idea of his party being so weak. He tried to demonstrate his power by another attack from the Holy Sword, but suddenly, he was struck by a headache from excessive mana consumption and screamed in pain. He shouted what the hell was happening to him, to which Mythia replied it's because he was running low on mana. Allan refused to believe he was suffering mana shortage, since it never happened to him before. Allan has more mana reserves than an ordinary person, so he wouldn't really have to worry about mana shortages as long as he used normal attacks. But now, he was used to excessive mana-consuming moves, especially ever since he got Holy Sword. The king also anticipated that the hero would run into mana shortage due to Holy Sword's high consumption, so the king had assigned Ishua to Hero's party right at the beginning. Thus, Allan never encountered mana shortage before. Now Mythia asked Allan if he could stand up. Allan was too afraid after realizing his weakness. He was scared of the lizard monster in front of him, knowing that even if he could defeat it usually, he can't do it now. While the lizardman only sees him as a prey, knowing it's stronger than Allan. Allan's survival instincts kicked in, and he ran away from the battle, leaving Mythia behind. He also ordered Ritteru to follow and protect him instead. Ritteru was worried about leaving Mythia behind by herself, but Allan shouted it's better that he escaped this place, instead of getting wiped out with a mere magic swordswoman. He shouted Hero's safety should be the priority. Hearing Ritteru was pissed, and she made up her mind now. She kept walking towards Mythia, seeing Allan questioning her what she was doing. Ritteru refused to abandon Mythia while she was fighting for her life, and she made it clear that Allan had no right to call himself a hero. Ritteru recalled she doesn't have any mana right now, so the only thing she could do now was to engage in battle by using her staff to hit the lizardman from the side. Allan was baffled by the sight of a sage using physical attacks, while Mythia followed up with daggers and slashed the lizardman's limbs in the opening created by Ritteru. Mythia was glad that she and Ritteru listened to Ishua's advice to learn how to fight without mana for worst-case scenarios. Right then they heard Allan's scream, as Allan was cornered by another lizardman. Mythia went and strangled that monster from behind, saving the hero who should be the one to save others. She made it clear they won't abandon their companions unlike Allan, and won't give up until the very end, to make sure they would get out of this place alive. After some time, they finally managed to get out of the dungeon, and Mythia and Ritteru were extremely tired since they did all the battling without mana and also carried Allan. Mythia was glad she never stopped practicing her sword and didn't rely on mana all the time. Ritteru admits she was a big help there, But while they were relieved to have come back out alive, Allan was mad and shouted at them what the hell were they grinning about. He hated the fact they couldn't even conquer a weak dungeon like this and retreated like cowards. He blamed their failure on the sage and magic swordsman not using their weapons properly, since Sage was moving around her staff for physical attacks, while Mythia was using daggers instead of her magic sword. He claimed he was the one to defeat most of the enemies in their exploration, while the other two were nothing but baggage and also the reason for their failure. Mythia had enough of it, and shouted Allan was to blame for everything since he was the first one to run out of mana. Allan excused it as just a badly timed headache, in which case Mythia yelled at him to go ahead and try using his holy sword here and now. Riduru calmed Mythia, saying it's no use dealing with someone like him, and Mythia admitted she was right, continuing to look at the hero Allan with disappointment and anger in her eyes. Allan hated being looked down with those eyes, while the other two I just decided to leave and rest in the nearby village. Allan still couldn't stop thinking of that disdainful look just now, and he just followed them to the nearest village from here. They arrived at the Axis village, where Ishua and Arya had visited earlier, and they welcomed the adventurers. Allan introduced himself as the hero and told the village lady they were looking for an inn to rest since they were tired after failing to conquer a dungeon. The lady was surprised to meet another hero on the same day, and she couldn't help but mention that the previous hero Ishua she met was a very humble and wonderful person, and so was Saint Arya. Allan slipped out a question from his mind, asking what was that failure doing here and why was he being called a hero. The village lady yelled at Allan to not dare badmouth the hero of their village, Ishua, but Allan repeated the same and even said that Ishua was just a scammer and a fool who got banished by him. Mythia and Riduru were shocked upon finding out Ishua was kicked out by Allan and didn't leave on purpose. And when Allan realized he spoke too much, he tried to change the topic and asked the villagers to just offer their best inn to him so he could rest, and also bring all of their mana recovery potions. The village lady asked him if he got money for all that, and Allan asked if they were really going to take money from the hero. He claimed it's the villagers who should be honored for getting to serve the hero, which ruined his image in their minds instantly, and Mythia and Riduru couldn't shut his mouth in time from spouting nonsense. Mythia tried to make him understand that this thing only happens in special circumstances, but Riduru told her it's no use, and the villagers were already hostile towards them. The village lady thought they were just some vile humans, who finally showed their true colors, trying to fake being a hero just to take money and valuables from people. Allan insisted on saying Ishua was the fake one, but the villagers knew better since Ishua didn't even accept a thank you from them and was very much different from fakes like him. Allan claimed he was the genuine one, but the next moment he got hit by an egg and the villagers started throwing stuff at them. They wouldn't tolerate anything against their savior Ishua and told the fake heroes to leave their village. Mythia told Allan they needed to run now, and Allan retreated in anger. Afterwards, Mythia and Riduru questioned Allan what the hell did he mean by banishing Ishua from the party. Allan told her to shut up, claiming he just kicked out an incompetent person who wasn't worthy of being in a hero's party. They couldn't believe they just let that happen to someone as kind as Ishua and decided to head off to him to apologize right away. She made it clear they could not even beat in a ranked dungeon without Ishua. But again, Allan shouted after hearing that name again and accused Mythia and Riduru of holding him back. He yelled at them if they also wanted to be kicked out of the party. Just like Ishua, after hearing which, they went silent, and Allan realized he might have said something he shouldn't have. Mythia and Riduru gave him the same hateful look, mentioning Allan had always been like that, and she doesn't mind leaving now since Ishua wasn't here anyway. Riduru also remarked Allan doesn't deserve to be a hero, and if they follow him, they would only lose their lives. Allan could feel he was in trouble, and if everyone leaves, it would be bad for him. He tried to keep them in the party, saying those two owe him a favor for letting them be in the party until now, and they could collect some mana recovery potions and dive into another dungeon again. But Mythia and Riduru already made up their minds and throwed their hero licenses at Allan's feet to make their resignation clear. Allan told them it was disrespectful to throw a hero license like that, but they don't care about being in this party anymore. Allan shouted he was the man renowned throughout the world as hero of this continent, but it didn't make a difference to those two, since they know he's a guy with trash personality. They just walked away, leaving Allan behind to regret his actions now. After that, Mythia asked Riduru what they should do from now on. Riduru mentioned since Ishua didn't really abandon them like they were told, they could team up with him. Riduru decided to use the detection skill she has to find Ishua with the help of a hair of his she got. And surprisingly, Mythia also has one hair of Ishua, just in case she ever had to find him with her own detection skills. Both laughed at the coincidence, which was clearly their possessiveness for Ishua. They activated the detection magic and discovered Ishua's current location was Norbish Town. While they headed to meet Ishua, Allan here was feeling envious of Ishua, and he didn't understand why he, a hero, needed to suffer because of a mere mana porter. Right then, he got an idea that he would recruit Ishua back to party again, since he must be having trouble after being kicked out of the party. He's sure that the loser would probably cry tears of joy to get a chance to come back into the party. He used his party detection skill, which allowed him to check his party members' locations through their licenses. Allan found out Ishua's current location was the Nabish town, and he decided to head there right away to get that trash mana porter back into the party. Meanwhile, Ishua was here in the Nabish town to begin his journey with him and Arya in the party. They went straight to the Adventurers Guild, and Arya first got her status check to determine her solo rank. Her all stats ranged around B rank, except for intelligence, which was a top S rank. The receptionist expected such great stats from a saint. After her turn, Arya told Ishua to get himself checked next. Ishua was nervous because he never had his status checked before, and now he was doing so to register himself as a new adventurer. He placed his hand on the crystal which measures one's status, and the moment it began, the crystal emitted a very radiant light of magic, and the bystanders and receptionist were shocked that this response was coming from a mana porter who wasn't supposed to have high status. The receptionist checked his stats, and all of them were on the high end, ranging in B and A's, but the most shocking one was his mana capacity, which was at SSS rank. Nobody had heard of SSS rank before, so it was a great discovery, while the receptionist wondered if there was something wrong with the measure device. Right then, Arya added that she never saw Ishua run out of mana, which was enough as a testimony for everyone to believe Ishua's stats were displayed correctly. The receptionist then determined that Ishua and Saint Arya's party would start off straight as C-rank adventurers. Others were astonished, because there haven't been any cases before of anyone starting at any ranks other than F or E. Ishua didn't want to receive any special treatment, but that was the least of his worries, because everyone present there wanted to recruit him and Saint Arya to their party. They promised to provide the best treatment they could offer them, but Ishua was overwhelmed by the sudden rain of recruitments. Moreover, he noticed Arya couldn't keep up with this much social interaction since she was shy. He told everyone to get away, stating he's just a mana porter and doesn't have much value. Right then, a girl shouted at the adventurers for troubling Ishua and told them to calm down. They were scared of this girl, so they quieted down, while she walked to Ishua and introduced herself as Diana and her job was Sword Saint. Ishua wondered if she was a famous adventurer or something, then someone told him Diana was actually an S-rank adventurer, and she belonged to the party of hero Lillian who recently defeated Ifrit, one of the 4 demons under direct control of the Demon Lord. Ishua was surprised to hear about another hero's party, while Diana stepped forward and apologized for the ruckus and mentioned she had something to ask of him. And that thing was, would he like to join their party instead? Ishua didn't expect even she, a sword saint, would straight up recruit him. But unfortunately, he didn't want to join anyone and wished to work alone for a while with Arya. Diana mentioned that her leader was qualified to be a hero, and she's sure Lillian would be a great leader for them. But Arya made it clear that Ishua recently had a hard time with a hero who didn't understand his abilities. Diana assured Lillian wasn't that kind of person, but Arya couldn't trust some leader who couldn't even come to meet the very people they wanted to recruit. Diana was silenced by that remark, having no excuses for that. Then Ishua apologized to her, firmly stating that Arya was just worried about him and didn't mean to be rude. Other than that, even though this was his first time meeting Diana, he felt like he could trust her, and her leader Lillian must be a fine person too. But even so, he was recently banished from his party and thus wishes to work only with people he knows. Diana understood what he was trying to say, although she was very disappointed he didn't join her party. She started crying, feeling bad about failing to complete the task given by Lillian to recruit Ishua. Ishua could see Diana was a bit clumsy on the surface, but from her demeanor alone he could tell she was really talented and might be a sincere person. However, it's just the timing was bad, and if it was any other time, he would have gladly accepted her offer. Ishua believed the hero Lillian must be a wonderful hero to have someone like Diana in her party. Diana returned to Lillian and apologized to her for failing her task. She found Lillian was practicing her magic right now, and she could tell even if she didn't have a magic-related job, that Lillian's magic circles were getting more complicated and improving day by day. Lillian soon finished her training and opened her eyes. She heard Diana about failing to recruit Ishua and thought he must have his own circumstances. Diana recalls Lillian here was a genius girl who acquired the hero job immediately after being born, and her number increased even more after she defeated one of 4 heavenly demons. But despite that, she always keeps training seriously without a hint of arrogance. However, her responsibilities as a hero also took away her time to enjoy her youth, and even her emotions have diluted. Although that is unless she hears a certain name. She cries as she hugs Diana, asking if Ishua hates him. Diana doesn't understand who Ishua was to Lillian, but that aside, she told her that Ishua asked the leader to come and meet him in person. Diana suggested she go herself next time, but Lillian was too embarrassed to even try that. Diana wondered when Ishua became her first love. When Lillian found out Ishua was in the same town today, she became a total wreck. Diana suggested to her they should follow Ishua secretly and find a chance to help him out when he's in a pinch. Lillian liked the idea and decided to do just that. Diana was glad Lillian was acting her age now, and it's natural for a girl her age to fall in love. She hoped meeting Ishua would be a good encounter for Lillian. The next morning, at the Adventurers Guild, Ishua and Arya came to take on their first quest as a party with just two of them. And the first thing they saw inside was a crowd of adventurers fighting each other like rats over who'll take which quest. Ishua didn't want to be involved with the crowd, then Arya noticed there was something kept on the table in the side as well. Ishua learned those were quests as well. When the receptionist saw him, she greeted him and noticed he was checking out a quest kept on the table. Ishua read out the quests, which were like subjugating undeads, filtration of rusted-out power reactors, and there was a quest even for searching for a cat. Arya liked cats, so she wanted to take it, and Ishua decided to just take all of the quests placed on the table here. The receptionist asked him if he was really fine with them, and he nodded that he liked these quests. The receptionist thought he was really kind, to think he would also take quests which were considered not good enough by others. Ishua was confused as to why the receptionist replied that nobody would take on these quests since they either don't pay enough or are not worth the effort. From Ishua's perspective, these were also necessary quests since someone must be worried about their cat. Later, he used some trick to lure cats to him in the town square. Arya asked him how he was doing this. Ishua replied he was just using a certain wavelength that cats like. He eventually found the cat from the quest, while Diana and Lillian were stalking him from behind, and they found Ishua's skill as amazing. Since even if they are proficient in magic or sword skills, it could take them all day long or a lifetime just to find a cat. While Ishua did it in just 30 minutes. On their next quest, it was undead subjugation, which was Arya's speciality, and she easily removed all the undeads in a matter of seconds. Ishua would scold her whenever she overdid it, while Lillian and Diana were shocked in the back to see those guys could deal with undeads just like that. Diana never saw someone with that level of magic output, and Lillian was still waiting for her chance to help Ishua next time. But even at the next quest, which was filtration of power reactors, Ishua handled it all by himself without breaking a single sweat. It was so easy. Ishua wondered if it's even okay to get paid for it. Lillian was already dying to get some chance to help Ishua, right? Then, some gangsters arrived, pissed off about the task of filtering the reactors being done by someone. They were the rival company of the one who needed help, and it's because of them they could not even rely on a maintenance company. The gang guys ambushed Ishua altogether, and Lillian thought this was finally her turn. But Ishua just sent the innocent guy to the back, and wondered what method he should use to take care of these guys, while also making sure not to damage some power reactors nearby. He came to one conclusion and casted a wide-range mana barrier around them. The gangsters didn't feel any danger at all until suddenly they started feeling headaches. Ishua actually casted a mana ring field where he increased the density of mana concentration in this zone. Usually, it increases the mana recovery power of individuals in the zone, but if they are not used to it, they would suffer from serious headaches. One of the enemies managed to remain standing somehow, and Ishua wanted to incapacitate him without causing injuries. So, he just supplied an overflowing mana into the target's body, which would cause the target to lose consciousness without even getting a moment to fight. Diana and Lillian didn't know Ishua could do that as well, and he handled the situation just fine all by himself. The more Diana knows about him, the more she's amazed by his techniques and unique ways to utilize his SSS rank magic power. Lillian lost this chance too, making her frustrated, and she counted on the next time. But Diana was certain now that a situation where Ishua would need their help wouldn't come. Around that time, someone else also arrived at the Nabish town. It was none other than hero Allan, who wanted to make Ishua join his party once again to return things to usual. Next day, Ishua went to the Adventurers Guild as usual to take quests. And by this time, others know him for various reasons, including the guy who helps out even with unprofitable quests. The receptionist remarked Ishua really became popular within a few days, but he believed they were misunderstanding things, and he's not really doing something extraordinary. Right then, Allan arrived and called out Ishua, and Ishua was startled to see Allan here of all places. He asked him where Mythia and Riduru were, to which he replied he banished them as well because they were incompetent. Ishua couldn't believe Allan could be so foolish, to kick out such talented individuals, but Allan didn't care and he straight up ordered Ishua to come back into his hero party. Ishua and everyone else present there could see how foolish the hero Allan was. While Allan questioned Ishua what's even there to think about, just follow what he says. Allan then started hearing sounds of laughter from the bystanders, and he asked them what's so funny here. One of them replied having heard the story of what happened from Saint Arya, about the stupid hero who banished Ishua. Allan yelled at him, does he even know who he's talking to? The man replied he should be the one to know that he was trying to order 2 C-rank adventurers there. Allan was shocked, since he knows beginners were supposed to be F or E ranks. Others told him that's just how amazing Ishua and Arya were, and even a cow could see Allan was having trouble without Ishua's mana. Allan hated being looked down upon by some random strangers, then Ishua made it clear he didn't want to join Allan's party anymore. After saying his piece, Ishua just went to select his next quest, while Allan was dumbfounded to think Ishua refused his offer, and what's more, he even got mocked by weaklings. He wanted to show his power to everyone right here, as he grabbed the handle of his sword, then someone shouted at him to stop what he's trying to do there. Ishua saw it was Diana, and she made it clear to Allan that fighting inside the guild was strictly forbidden, so if Allan wanted to show his power so much, she would be his opponent. She declared having the resolve to handle Allan anytime, and Allan was a little taken aback by this strange intimidation from her. He could tell this woman was dangerous, so he decided to retreat for today and ran away. Diana was disappointed in that hero, since that guy couldn't even grasp the difference in their abilities until she exerted her hostility so openly. Ishua thanked Diana for the help, and Diana now understands what Ishua meant by bad experience with a hero. She hopes Allan won't cause any troubles for Ishua anymore. After that, Ishua went on to do the regular quests for a week, until one day, he saw a quest that required the adventurer to go to the elf village and report anything unusual to the guild. Arya was surprised when she saw the reward was 30 gold coins, which were definitely way more than what the regular quests give. Ishua was on guard, as he can't risk putting Arya's life in danger with a strange quest, so he wasn't interested in taking that quest. When the receptionist saw that, she urged him to take that quest to visit the elf village. He would just have to go there and report back that everything was fine. Ishua then asked her if that was the case, why weren't other people taking it? She replied there's a reason for that, and she really didn't want to say it, but actually that quest was assigned to Ishua by the guild. Since Ishua always handled dud quests, they decided to give him a special reward through a dud quest. Ishua thought that was outrageous for someone who has only worked for around a week, but his hard work in that time was all the more reason to give this quest to him. She requested him to take it, considering it as a sightseeing trip. While Ishua was trying to turn it down, Arya liked the idea of sightseeing with Ishua and immediately shouted they will take the quest. Ishua figured Arya might have been tired from doing quests back to back, so he should take her somewhere like a vacation. He accepted the quest, which made both the receptionist and Arya happy. Lillian, who heard them from the side, was interested in going to the elf village as well, since Ishua was going there. She wanted to find a chance to win his trust, whereas Diana was kinda amazed how good Lillian's stealth skills have become despite being a hero. She tried to make her understand that Ishua won't need their help, but Lillian already went over to the receptionist and asked for quests around the elf village. The receptionist looked around and found a quest to subjugate a mutated ogre king. However, it was in a rank quest, and currently the most difficult one they have right now. Lillian thought even in a rank quest wouldn't be a problem for her, and the receptionist also felt the same. Thus, they decided to head out right away for the elf village to finish this quest and also find a chance to win Ishua's trust. 3 days later, Ishua and Arya just arrived near the elf village through a carriage, and then can't believe the world tree Yggdrasil was so huge that they could see it even from kilometers away. Ishua recalled the world tree was a legendary tree protecting the elven village for over 2,000 years, purifying the miasma. Saint Arya added the origin of the world tree was a seed, sowed by an angel into the lands ruled by monsters, which growed into a large tree and people could live around it peacefully without fearing monsters. According to legends, it's also the world tree which protected the world from monsters, and Ishua recalled Arya loved that story a lot. However, Ishua was strangely getting a bad feeling, as he could sense something odd about the mana flow of the world tree. He hoped he was just imagining things. Meanwhile, Lillian and Diana were fighting monsters and got distracted because of all the fighting, losing track of Ishua. Diana told her it couldn't be helped, and they were currently right at the foot of the world tree. If there are this many monsters here, they can't let these monsters pass and create trouble on the main road. Diana was also bothered by the thick miasma around them, putting a strain in her lungs. Lillian casted a high healing spell on her, for which she thanked him, but they know it was just a temporary relief. They needed to deal with all these monsters and deal with this miasma here. Suddenly, they were attacked by another monster, this time a stronger one, the mutated Ogre King, which was the target of the subjugation quest. Diana was glad it saved the trouble of them finding it, as she charged in to cut the ogre with her sword strike. But her confidence shattered when her sword failed to land any cuts on the Ogre King, and it didn't even have to dodge it. Diana was shocked, wondering why her attacks weren't working on it. Lillian mentioned the monster seemed to have evolved from absorbing plenty of mana present around it, and got promoted to S rank from A. In that case, Diana required Lillian to help her by distracting that monster for a moment. Lillian activated her special skill, which came with her hero job, although it consumes a lot of magical power. With that skill, she could transport party and enemies to a virtual world of her own creation. It's called Inherent Barrier Fantasy World, and here they could fight with a significant advantage to their side. It's a chess-like skill worthy of a hero, since whatever Lillian imagines would take place here. Now, Lillian supercharged Diana's sword, making it the strongest sword she could imagine. It was the strongest weapon they had to fight their enemies, and Diana swung down the sword strike with all her might, believing this would end that monster for sure. Lillian was also confident, but their happiness didn't last long when they saw that the Ogre King survived the strike and his tough body deflected it without taking any damage. Both of them knew they were done for now, because they have never seen a monster who could deflect an attack as strong as that one. Even one of the 4 heavenly demons took damage from it, which means this mutated monster had exponentially higher magic resistance. Lillian told Diana she was running out of mana, so she would have to remain still to maintain this fantasy world, while Diana would have to keep trying to kill that thing over there. Diana attacked the Ogre King multiple times, but her sword would deflect every time, eventually tiring her out. Right then, the Ogre King attacked her when she was off guard, and the hit from his club dealt severe damage to her torso, making her cough out blood and sending her flying away. Lillian was now left defenseless, as the monster was approaching her. She didn't want to die in a place like this, she wanted to become a great hero and defeat the Demon Lord. But with things turning out like this, she didn't think she would survive. She regrets not being able to do anything for Ishua in this life. Right then, she heard Ishua's voice as he told Arya to stick close to him while he tried to enter this invisible space. Lillian didn't expect anyone would be able to enter her space like this, because it would be impossible without her permission. Yet, Ishua managed to just grab the ends of it and enter it like any other normal place. In her whole life, Lillian received a lot of attention from many people, but most of it only because she was a hero, and they believed it would be easy to deceive a little girl like that and gain benefits of being in a hero's party. Lillian always had to remain on guard, and she would often be alone. Once, she fell while walking and dropped her teddy bear on the ground. She picked it up and saw it had become dirty from the mud. She started crying, feeling helpless, and that was when she heard Ishua's voice for the first time when he called her out asking if she was all right. She could never forget that day and still remembers it when she was near death. Lillian would regret it if she died without doing anything for that person she holds dear. And fortunately, the very same person showed up at the time when she needed help. While she was lost in thought, Ishua noticed the emergency and quickly helped her out of the way of the monster's attack. He asked her if she was all right, while Lillian thanked him for saving her life, clearly being nervous from being too close to him at the same time. Ishua remembers he met her at the castle some years ago, but importantly, they found Diana in a dire situation. Ishua looked around to analyze what happened around here. Just a few hours ago, Ishua was actually walking around outside the elf village, fighting some monsters to pass time, since they didn't get an entry inside due to some circumstances. Arya was disappointed as they thought the village was open, even the guide said so. She took out her anger on the monsters, while complaining every minute why can't they get an entry into the elf village. While she was taking out monsters around the forest, Ishua noticed they were running into a lot of rank monsters around here, as if they were inside a demon realm. But since they were too easy for Saint Arya, she didn't notice they were fighting rank monsters until now. Ishua hoped she would be more aware of the surroundings, then they noticed the miasma around this area was starting to get thicker. Ishua decided to use his mana link field to create a barrier around them that would also filter the air of miasma around them. They decided to patrol the areas around the village, to see if there was any possible danger just in case for people living here. At some point, Ishua noticed an abnormality in a certain place, realizing there was surely a lot of weird stuff happening here for a leisure quest. He went to the place where he was getting the strange feeling from a while, eventually reaching the place where Lillian was fighting inside her fantasy world barrier. Arya also noticed it now that they were so close to it, and she wondered if it was the work of miasma. Ishua analyzed it and found out it was an incredibly complicated magical configuration. Since he analyzed it, he could try to create an opening into that space. He asked Arya to stick close to him as they entered the space. Lillian was amazed Ishua analyzed part of her fantasy world just like that, while she herself hasn't been able to master it despite many years. Now Ishua asked her if this space was created by her. She agreed to it, and he realized the girl he met earlier was actually hero Lillian. The ogre interrupted their reunion with an attack, and Ishua quickly understood the situation, that this monster was mutated by absorbing miasma and evolved into higher rank. He quickly charged Lillian's magic power completely in an instant, then moved on to give instructions to Arya to heal Diana. Arya used her healing magic to quickly cure all the wounds Diana suffered, and the moment Diana woke up, she was worried about Lillian. When Diana saw Arya and Ishua, she wondered why they were here. That aside, Arya told Ishua she couldn't purify the miasma inhaled by Diana, in which case, he handled it himself and cleaned her body of any miasma by using pure mana. Diana was amazed she was feeling completely fine now, and to think such a method exists was a big discovery. Ishua claimed he just learned a few things to avoid being seen as a low-tier mana porter. Now Lillian attacked the ogre with a magic fireball, but it didn't incur any damage. She rained down dozens of them repeatedly just to exhaust the monster, and Ishua knows how hard it was to cast multiple magic spells like that. However, Lillian was disappointed she still didn't land much damage at all to that mutated monster, so she decided to step up as a hero and told Ishua it was a great reunion. She was happy to meet him one last time. She thought of staying behind to hold this monster here, while Ishua and others escaped this place. She swore it on the pride of the hero, and Ishua admired how brave she was, truly deserving of being a hero. Unlike Allan, who would never sacrifice himself for others, she didn't even think twice about it. But Ishua didn't have any plan on leaving her behind, and told her she won't be able to defeat that monster alone. She was confused why wasn't he leaving. Then Ishua asked Arya to do the usual, after which Arya casted multiple buffs and recovery spells on all of them, while Ishua handled all the mana costs, so everyone else could use their skills without limits. Arya focused on the support spells, and with her powers as a saint being limitless thanks to Ishua, they were almost invincible now, and Diana and Lillian could keep on fighting without stopping. Ishua told them to go for it, and Diana was the first one to take the lead and land a small cut on the Ogre King's belly. Lillian noticed their attacks were finally causing some damage to that thing, then out of nowhere, Arya unleashed her Holy Nova Beam straight at the Ogre King. Diana had seen this before many times, but from close she could literally feel the incredible firepower in that beam. However, even that attack left only a small scratch on the ogre, which means the battle would stretch for a long time. Ishua had already got an idea on how they could handle that monster, and he began instilling the holy mana into that monster's body. Lillian realized what Ishua was doing, and Ishua explained if he simply poured a lot of holy mana into a monster made of miasma, the opposite of evolution would happen and the monster would be weakened over time. His theory turned out to be correct, and the Ogre King slowly weakened back to A rank 1. Now they could easily cut it down, and Diana asked Lillian to assist her, and she created the strongest sword she could imagine. Ishua was amazed by the output of that sword, as Diana swung the blade with all her might and defeated the Ogre King. After that, Ishua and Diana shook hands as she thanked him and formally introduced her leader to Ishua. Diana told Lillian to properly greet him now, and she nervously spelled out her name. Ishua mentioned they already met at the castle once before. Lillian was all flustered to think he still remembers her. Ishua realized Lillian might be more timid than Arya. Diana then mentioned it was odd to see so much miasma around this place near the World Tree. They decided to head to the elf village to learn more about the situation. But right then, they saw a part of the World Tree wither away, which seemed to indicate signs of a calamity. Lillian urged them to quickly make their way to the elf village and check the situation there. Ishua liked how reliable she was, as expected of a hero. When they arrived at the elf village, the guards saw Ishua and Arya and still remember they came here earlier as well. Then Lillian introduced herself as hero, stating she had come here to investigate the area around the elf village. The guard questioned her if she was the real deal, because they already had someone call himself a hero enter the village, and things have been getting stranger since then. He was worried she could be another fake hero, but they didn't have much time to think about that and ran past them. The guards didn't stop them, since the situation was already getting out of hand at the World Tree. Ishua was a bit sad that his first visit to an elf village had to be done in a hurry like this, especially when it was supposed to be for sightseeing. Once they arrived at the center of the village, they heard a familiar voice from there, which belonged to Allan, shouting it's not his fault. A few days back, Allan had to visit the castle to report his achievements to the king, but he didn't know what to say because things had been in turmoil for him. Allan had to travel back from Nabish immediately to the castle after getting sudden summons from the king. The prime minister was expecting to hear some great news from the hero they acknowledged. They were proud of the heroes they chose, ever since hero Lillian managed to defeat one of the 4 heavenly demons. The prime minister wanted to hear Allan's achievements, hoping for some great news, but Allan replied that he just raised a few levels in the past few days. Minister questioned if that was all. Allan replied hesitantly that he was actually in the middle of conquering in a ranked dungeon, after which he would soon move on to explore S-rank dungeons. But the king shouted he didn't want to hear the same reports of dungeon explorations. He wanted to hear a genuine report from Ishua now. Allan was pissed off. Why was Ishua's name being mentioned again? And either way, if the king found out that he was the only one left in the party, it would be bad for him. He lied that Ishua wasn't feeling well, which worried the king, and he asked out of concern if he was all right. Allan lied further that Arya was with Ishua, and he was just taking it easy and resting for now. Allan wanted to lie his way out of this situation anyhow, and make some progress desperately to give a good report to the king next time. The king remained patient and figured it's okay then, and mentioned to Allan that he had an urgent quest for him. He told Allan to discuss this quest with Ishua also before moving forward. After hearing that quest, Allan set out on his journey to the elf village and arrived at the Yggdrasil. The quest he received was to investigate the surroundings of the elf village, where mutated monsters have been appearing more often lately. He asked about it from the coachman, asking if there are really abnormal monsters around here recently. The man replied there were indeed many reports saying that, which was also why this area was closed right now. Allan has heard that hero Lillian went off to hunt mutated monsters there already, but Allan doesn't think she'll be of much help. The coachman mentioned having heard that hero Lillian was a very strong and beautiful woman, but all Allan thinks of her was a little runt with a gorilla-like swordswoman with her. Allan planned to resolve the situation here by himself and get the credits, and since he didn't encounter any monsters, he thought the rumors were just rumors after all. He thought things were going well for him now. If Ishua was here at the party, he would have gained some free fame without even doing anything. When Allan arrived at the elf village, he was glad he didn't encounter any monsters on the way. The guard told him no one could enter the village now without permission. Then Allan asked the guard if Lillian had come here. The elf guard asked him who he was, to which Allan replied with his hero license that he was a hero, here on the orders of the king to investigate the elf village. The elf guard never heard of a hero acting alone, but Allan confirmed it is what it seems and asked to be let into the village. Right then, the Queen of Elves arrived there and told the guard to let him in. Her name was Chelsea, and her beauty mesmerized Allan there. Chelsea thought they didn't have a reason to hide their problems anymore, and since they don't have a solution either, they would have to accept outside help at this point. She asked Allan to follow her, and warned him if things didn't go well here, this problem could very well engulf the whole world. So she told him to be very careful. Allan wondered why she was making such a big deal out of it. Was the problem really that hard to handle? But when he thought about King wanting a good report from him, Allan was desperate to do anything just to remain above the water and check the situation first. If it turned out to be too much for him, he would just flee. Inside the elf village, he got strange looks from the villagers, as if they were all worried and scared of something. Even Allan could understand that the situation must be pretty bad ahead, so he asked the elf queen if Lillian had come here before. The elf queen replied Allan was the only one who arrived here recently, which made Allan think if she's not here, should he meet up with her first. But then he became greedy and thought this was his chance to handle the situation by himself and prove to the king that he didn't need others. Soon, he arrived at the World Tree. It was incredibly huge from up close, and Allan looked around and found the odd thing here was that the roots of the World Tree seemed to be rotting away slowly. The elves were trying to keep it safe as much as possible, but nothing was working. Chelsea confirmed the World Tree was actually losing its vitality. The miasma seemed to be overpowering the World Tree. Allan figured the monsters must be really getting more violent in that case, which means the entire region would soon become uninhabitable. Allan knew right away this situation was out of his control. But when the elf queen asked him if he could manage it, Allan thought of making up a good excuse to leave. He claimed he was just here to investigate, but then he remembered the angry faces of the Prime Minister and King, which stopped him from thinking twice. Chelsea asked him what's up, then Allan told her to just leave this situation to him. He went ahead and said it now, taking all the responsibility to cure the World Tree and even swearing on his pride as a hero. Now he has no choice but to do it. Allan thought he could try casting a little healing magic on it as he went down to the World Tree. The Elf Queen thought the hero was reliable, and even the elves from the World Tree Guardian team couldn't do anything about it. Allan didn't know there was a whole separate team of elves to guard and cure the World Tree, and he thought if that's the case he might as well pull it off with his hero ability and healing skills. He casted resurrection magic on the World Tree, which he thought was a very high-level recovery spell that could heal even life-threatening injuries. He hasn't even told others about him being able to use it, since he left healing tasks to Arya until now. However, nothing happened, and the elves remarked that the spell was a joke. No way something like that would work in this situation. Allan said he was just preparing, after which he began to use all sorts of healing spells and anti-poison spells he knew, but nothing was working, and the elves thought the hype behind Hero wasn't as expected. They commented if that much would have worked, the elves could have handled the situation themselves way earlier. Allan was getting frustrated and more desperate, as if he didn't report results to the king this time either, he would cease to be a hero. Then he noticed that at a certain root of the World Tree, it seemed to be discolored and looking all odd, as if the miasma was collected over there. Allan drew his blade, claiming he finally knew the root of the problem here. He thought it's time to show he's a real hero, but Queen Chelsea was worried and she asked him what he was planning to do. Allan told her to shut up and watch as he went to the swollen root and used his holy sword to cut down the part of the root which was overgrown there. The Queen Chelsea screamed in worry, while Allan was proud of what he did. Chelsea shouted at Allan had he lost his mind or something to attack the World Tree like that. Allan claimed he just cut out the source of miasma, since it was clear that miasma was accumulated there. Suddenly, miasma began spreading rapidly throughout the World Tree, and Allan was afraid why was this happening so quickly at that. The Elf Queen lost all hope, as the World Tree was now dying rapidly before their eyes. She explained that roots were the World Tree's defensive instinct, and the swollen-up root Allan cut down was the last line of defense against the miasma. Allan realized he messed up big time, and now that he did something unforgivable, the elves were all angry at Allan, and they accused him of working with the Demon Lord. Allan tried to speak up, he had no idea and didn't do it on purpose, so it wasn't his fault. Right then, Allan heard a voice calling for him, and he could never forget that voice, as he yelled at Ishua why the hell was he here. Ishua questioned him in return about what he did to the World Tree. The elves told him that hero Allan cut off the root that was sealing the miasma. Ishua jumped down to quickly check the situation from close, while the Elf Queen asked Lillian who they were. Lillian replied she was the hero Lillian, and she knows the Elf Queen Chelsea already. Chelsea claimed at least she used to be the Queen of Elves until the World Tree started dying. After this shameful event, she no longer deserves to be the queen. But then Lillian assured her not to think like that, because it's still too early to fall into despair. Ishua there went and observed the World Tree from up close, until he sensed the World Tree's soul in there. He told everyone the World Tree was still alive, and he would try to heal it. The Elf Queen was hopeful after hearing that, but other elves didn't want to trust a human again after what happened earlier. Lillian calmed them down, stating that the man over there, Ishua, was still a novice adventurer and only a mere mana porter right now. But as a hero herself, she could guarantee that he would eventually become the man who could save the world. The Elf Queen found her words trustworthy, and she looked at Ishua's eyes filled with confidence. Chelsea told others to let Ishua do it, and she wanted to trust him. And either way, the World Tree would die if things remain like this. On the other hand, she ordered an arrest for Allan, who tried to kill the World Tree. Allan shouted he was the leader of Ishua, but nobody would believe that and arrested him. Meanwhile, Ishua was preparing to heal the World Tree, knowing full well how big of a responsibility it is. He began transferring holy mana to the World Tree, nullifying the miasma within it with the holy attribute. He also needed to restore the severed root over there, so he casted a mana hole spell in the air. The elves questioned what that distorted magic circle was now. The next second, the magic circle began sucking the miasma. Ishua stated he created a mana hole which would act like stealing miasma from the World Tree. He casted more and more mana holes around the World Tree, then asked Lillian to place more circles like this in places with strong miasma in the World Tree's body. He asked her to do that since he could not reach high places, while she could use magic to levitate. Lillian did as she was told, and since she was getting mana from Ishua, it was easy to cast multiple complex magic circles without feeling tired at all. Their method was slowly working and the world tree was indeed getting better. Chelsea didn't know such a method existed, and she questioned Ishua what on earth was he. Ishua replied he was just a mana porter, and then asked Lillian to keep going and place more mana holes. Just then, a guard elf came shouting that the situation was bad out there, because their village was being swarmed by hundreds of monsters out of nowhere. The elf queen was troubled to hear of a stampede at this time, right when the world tree wasn't well. Lillian figured since world tree can't purify miasma in the current situation, the monsters have become more active. Ishua can't leave this place because he needed to be here to treat the world tree, and the same goes for Lillian. Diana was glad she would be of some use now, since she was starting to worry she won't be of help in this situation. Ishua asked Diana and Arya to handle the situation out there and hold off the monsters, while he and Lillian cure the world tree. After Diana and Arya went to the gates of the village, Diana told everyone including the elf guards that they can't let any of the monsters get past this point. She braced herself, as it would be her first time teaming up with Saint Arya, and the situation would be very difficult even for them. More monsters appeared from the forest one by one, and Diana asked the archers to handle the side ones, while she and Arya would take care of the large swarm before them at the main path. Arya casted a Holy Nova spell, which killed a couple of monsters at once. Diana thought Arya was really amazing with her firepower. At the same time, elves from the village brought mana recovery potions so Saint Arya could keep going for a long time. She then casted buffs on Diana, and she charged at the monsters right away to play her role as well. Diana's raw strength was considerably much more effective in clearing out the masses of monsters, and both she and Arya made a pretty good team by holding off the monsters like that. The hero's party members amazed the elf guards, and they admit they were strong, but they don't know how long they could hold off these masses of monsters in hundreds. Meanwhile, Ishua and Lillian were casting mana hole one after another, and they just need a few more to finish curing the world tree. Diana got a little injured by one of the small monsters which attacked from her blind spot. Arya casted healing to cure her wound in an instant, after which they went back to fighting monsters relentlessly, no matter how tiring it was. After a while they ran out of mana potions, while the miasma in the surroundings was getting thicker and thicker. But when they saw the elves were doing their best to protect the boundaries as well, Diana couldn't afford to complain or slack off even a bit, and felt like they needed to keep fighting until the world tree was recovered. Meanwhile, one of the guards reported to the queen that it's only a matter of time before the monsters would break through the village. She had already begun evacuating citizens. Given the current situation, the monsters would arrive here before the world tree gets cured. She ordered that anyone who could fight was to head to the gates right away, and even she would join the fight with a bow if she needed to. Ishua here assessed that miasma was finally removed, and mana was starting to flow back into the world tree. Now, he just needs to keep going for a little longer. Meanwhile, Diana was getting tired and her left leg was pierced through by a monster. Arya prepared to cast healing right away, but even she was nearing her limit and didn't have much mana left. Diana noticed that and told Arya to fall back, even if it meant for her to fight here at the front alone against hundreds of monsters. She glanced left and right, and the situation didn't seem in their favor at all. She thought it was the worst day of her life, to think even she, the Sword Saint, would have to prepare to die twice in a single day. She resolved herself that if she made it alive through this, she would train even harder than before to never see a situation like this again. Right then, she noticed two people jumping down from the sky and landing straight in the middle of the horde of monsters. She recognized them. It was magic swordswoman Mythia and the sage Riduru with her powerful magic attacks. They arrived at the perfect timing, and Diana wondered where they came from. Arya was glad to see her former party members here to assist them, changing the flow of tide in their favor. A few weeks ago, after they left Allan's party, they set out for their own path and journey to meet Ishua, leaving Allan behind. They were excited to meet Ishua when suddenly they encountered some people shouting for help. They were ambushed by some monsters, so without thinking twice, Mythia and Riduru decided to help out those guys even though it would get them to be late for meeting Ishua. Because they know if it was Ishua, he would definitely help people in need. And they also wanted to take out all their frustration from recent events and run wild in this battle. However, after they helped those humans, Riduru and Mythia found themselves tagging along with those guys, even though they were heading in the opposite direction to the one leading Nabish town. They couldn't just leave the people here defenseless since their escorts were wiped out by those monsters. Mythia planned on sending them off safely and then headed to Nabish town. Unlike what they planned, Ritteru and Mythia found themselves in a luxurious mansion of a noble. They were offered the treat by the noble, who wanted to express his thanks to them for saving their daughter's life, who was saved by the medicines which were carried in the carriage they saved. Ritteru urged Mythia they should leave now, but the noble guy requested them to stay the night. He would regret it if he just let them leave without thanking them properly. Mythia and Ritteru insisted on leaving, humbly turning down the offer or thanks, but the noble guy started begging them to let him repay the favor. Otherwise, he won't be able to face his ancestors if he let people who saved his daughter leave just like that. Mythia and Ritteru didn't want to hurt his sentiments, so they decided to stay for the night, but then Ritteru didn't understand how they could end up staying there for a whole week. The noble would always beg them to stay one more night. Mythia already wanted to leave now so they could head to Nabish quickly. Ritteru checked that Ishua was staying in Nabish from some time now, and they can't let their guard down anymore. So the first thing they did the next morning was to leave the place and head off to meet Ishua. But by the time they reached Nabish town, Ishua wasn't there, and they realized they might have been too late. The receptionist told them Ishua went to the elf village recently to do a special quest assigned by the guild. Mythia wanted to chase after him right away, but then the receptionist stopped them and mentioned that the king had recently prohibited anyone from entering the area around the village. Ritteru figured if it's the king's order, they can't help but obey it. But Mythia didn't want to wait. She learned Ishua did all the leftover quests until now, so she decided to do them since he's not here to help those people in need and carry on his legacy. They took undead subjugation quests, pet finding quests, and even carrying or caretaking ones. Eventually, they were called as new leftover quests hunters, and Mythia just wanted to be praised by Ishua when he returned. But then, Ritteru didn't understand when they ended up being carried away by a large bird. She woke up Mythia, who slept out of boredom, and she also questioned Ritteru what the hell happened to them. Ritteru told her they slept too much and reminded her that they were attacked by this bird. And now, this bird seemed to be planning to take them to its nest and feed them to its chicks. Mythia didn't want to end up eating bird chicks' food, and she planned on escaping the moment they got close to the ground. Ritteru mentioned this bird was probably heading to Elf Village, which was exactly where Ishua was at right now. Ritteru excused the king's order that wouldn't apply to them if they were carried by a bird, and it was out of their control. So they just pretended to be helplessly carried by this bird. Mythia figured a bird this size would definitely have a nest around the world tree. But when they arrived close to the village, Ritteru pointed out the state of the world tree seemed bad. And that's how they arrived at the elf village and saw Diana and Arya fighting the horde of monsters by themselves. Mythia could easily take out monsters with less effort, so she was slowing the momentum of monsters swarm effectively, while Ritteru was using both physical and magical attacks to clean her side filled with monsters. Arya noticed those two have gotten better at fighting while conserving mana. Diana, on the other hand, can't help but wonder why hero Allan was such a fool to banish skilled people like them. Ritteru then gave a mana potion to Arya, and Diana also got some rest thanks to them, so she could join the battle again and be helpful instead of being a burden. Diana's amazing sword skills astounded Mythia, and at the same time Lillian also arrived there. She announced her entry and made an heroic scene of raining down hundreds of fireballs upon the monsters. They were glad to receive more help, and Mythia was seeing hero Lillian for the first time in person. She has heard of her, being the hero who defeated one of 4 heavenly demons. Lillian told everyone that they finished setting up mana holes, and Ishua was handling the rest to neutralize the miasma. Their group seemed to be more robust than before now, when it was just 2 Arya and Diana, and now it's 5 of them. All of them had faith that Ishua would definitely handle things on his end without fail. Lillian recalled when she finished setting up mana holes, Ishua took over the control of all of the mana holes, and slowly the elves noticed the world tree seemed to be dropping lesser leaves. Ishua was glad they stopped the erosion of the miasma, after which he asked Lillian to head over to others and help them. Now he just has to pour the holy attribute mana to the world tree and recover the lost circulatory functions. The elves can't believe a human could handle so many magic circles at once, while also pouring his own mana into the world tree. Even the Queen of Elves don't have that much mana capacity, and Ishua was handling the whole circulation there by himself. She would make sure to remember Ishua's name since he was doing the impossible. Ishua focused on the circulation of mana inside the world tree. Slowly, the world tree began to heal. The leaves stopped falling completely, and new leaves were also growing rapidly back on the branches. It means the world tree's regenerative powers have been restored, becoming fully alive back again. Chelsea broke into tears, seeing the world tree breathing normally once again. On the boundaries of the village, Diana and others were fighting the monsters without stopping. They could feel it when the miasma thinned out and the world tree was back to functioning normally. It means the purification was working again, and they needed to fight probably for a few minutes more only. But then they noticed the monsters had stopped advancing, as if they were ordered to do so. Mythia found that pretty odd, while the monsters just turned around and started repeating from there. It was surprising, as the monsters began walking away like their mission had failed or something. Ritteru mentioned the monsters must have become weaker after the purification function of the world tree started again, which means they managed to save the village. Everyone burst into joy over the victory of this battle they thought they wouldn't win, and they all admired Ishua even more, who made it possible. Meanwhile, the elf queen wasn't sure how to express her gratitude to him. Ishua told her one last thing was left, after which he poured in an insane amount of mana into a magic circle and casted it over the whole world tree to ensure things would never turn dire again. The queen asked him what he did. Ishua replied he applied to a storehouse of light magic, which would ensure the purification function would never be halted again. Chelsea didn't expect he would go that far for them, and right then, everyone else also returned from the gates, calling out Ishua. Arya went straight for a hug, saying they did it. Ishua thanked everyone, especially Lillian and Diana, for helping them out. He was then surprised to see even Mythia and Ritteru were here as well. Mythia also hugged him, reminding him it's been a long time since they met. Ishua didn't expect two of them would come to help as well. Mythia replied it was obvious since they would always come to help Ishua. But when Ritteru spilled, they were actually coincidentally brought here by a bird. Chelsea called out Ishua and claimed he was truly a savior who descended upon the elven village. And it's not just him, but thanks to others as well who saved the village and world tree, remarking that they were a great party. Ishua mentioned they weren't actually a party, it's just that they happened to be around here at the same time. Chelsea thought they were a party, since everyone showed remarkable coordination as if they were working together for years. She was fine with anything, after which she announced they would call for a festival to properly thank their saviors. The party was held the same night and everyone was having a blast, some were dancing, and some were enjoying the food specialities of Elf Village. Chelsea mentioned that even if Allan hadn't dealt that devastating blow to the world tree, he was still destined to die like that, so she never thought they could make it through all that. Ishua could only imagine how much of a burden Chelsea was carrying as the queen, and she promised to help him if there's anything she could do for him, bowing her head in respect. Ishua told her to raise her head and said that her holding this festival for them was enough for him. Chelsea came to know Ishua was really selfless. Right then, he heard a familiar voice which frightened him as it belonged to drunk Arya. Ishua didn't notice when she even drank, and now she was totally catching all the attention of everyone, being so wasted unlike a saint. He tried to ask her to keep drinking too low, but she argued a saint could purify drunkenness if she wanted. If that's so, he asked her why don't she get sober then. Arya skipped the question and asked Ishua Senpai to have a drink together with her as well, getting too close to him while asking him to join. Ishua tried telling her to get off him, and then he noticed someone else was also shouting, which turned out to be hero Lillian, who was sobbing over why her feelings didn't reach Ishua. Diana shouted who was the one to provide drinks to Lillian, which made her go out of character. Now she feels like she's a weak hero who was hated by people. Diana tried to calm her down, but Lillian would keep flying around with drink in her hands. Diana then noticed Ishua was looking over their way. She and Ishua shared a familiar feeling of having it hard looking over their drunk friends. Everyone enjoyed the celebration, going out of serious characters and letting it loose for once till they fell asleep. The next day, Ishua prepared to take his leave. They had also taken Allan with them, although in a cage because he committed crimes here. Allan demanded to be released, but the elves won't let that happen, as they would report him to the king. Mythia wishes they could just drop the cage thing and just break Allan's leg or something to take him back. Ishua calmly told Allan that they need to report everything that happened to the king, so he should keep it down. They would first head to Nabish town and then to the royal capital. The Queen of Elves thanked him for everything and hoped they would come back soon in future. Ishua thanked the Queen of Elves for the festival. He also wanted to revisit it soon. For now, he set off on their way back to Nabish town. When they arrived at Nabish town, Ishua went straight to the Adventurers Guild, and the receptionist was glad to see he was fine and also regrouped with others. She was worried ever since things got bad around Elf Village. Then Ishua assured her they were safe now, and he would also like to report about the quest now. He told her everything that went down while he was there, and she was shocked to hear the world tree almost died. And because of that, they not only had to fight an S-rank monster, but also managed to revive the world tree. The receptionist knew Ishua was extraordinary, but all of this was just way too abnormal and she questioned who he really was. Ishua replied that he was just a normal mana porter, and everyone behind him shook their heads to make it clear that's not the case at all. The receptionist stated they just intended to express gratitude with this quest, but now it definitely demands raising the reward, given how much they had to suffer. Ishua didn't think he did anything special, and he was fine with just 30 gold coins as promised, which was too much already. The receptionist can't believe such a humble person exists, but Arya was worried because this humble person actually believes he didn't do anything significant. The receptionist marked the quest completed, and she marked Lillian's quest done as well. She was glad to hear that the rising hero Lillian teamed up with SSS-ranked Mana Porter Ishua, and she wished she could have seen it. Right then, they heard someone shouting outside, and the receptionist didn't want to go through the trouble of dealing with the hero Allan, who doesn't deserve to be called such at all. Allan shouted those four over there were members of his party, so their achievements were his as well. They reminded him he was the one to banish them, and the adventurers were all pissed, asking Allan if he wanted to start a war with elves or something. Ishua figured they should have had Allan waiting outside the city so he wouldn't suffer this much insults, but Mythia wanted this guy to feel more miserable, especially after he nearly left her to die in a ranked dungeon. She clearly holds a grudge against Allan. Ishua stated it's about time they should head off to the royal capital now and report everything to the king. When they arrived in the royal castle, the king was glad to see them coming back safely. He mentioned having heard about everything already from the emissary of 11 Queen. He doesn't understand why would Allan go ahead alone and make things worse like that. Allan didn't have a reply for that, so Arya spoke up that Allan had kicked Ishua from the party, after which she and the other two had doubts, so they also left the party. The king was angered upon hearing that, and Allan told Arya to quiet down. But the king told Allan to shut up and questioned Ishua if this was all true. Ishua confirmed things like that, and Allan told him the party doesn't need a member who could only give mana. The king exclaimed at Allan, stating that holy swords use up a lot of mana, so he had Ishua in their party to cover the mana costs. Mythia also added that Allan tried to conquer a dungeon with 3 of them and then left her to die alone in the dungeon. The king did not need to hear any more, as he realized Allan was already alone by the time he was given the elf village investigation task. Allan lied to him, the king, that time. Allan can't talk his way out of that. Then the prime minister announced the clear conclusion that Allan was now stripped of his status as a hero. Allan requested the king to give him another chance. He would definitely make a comeback. He requested Ishua and others to rejoin his party and start over. But they weren't going to trust him anymore, and Arya decided to challenge Allan, that if he really deserved to be a hero, he needed to start all over as an adventurer and become a successful adventurer in a short time. Others could feel Arya was currently not talking as a saint, while Allan there didn't like the idea at all. The king also agreed with that, since Allan hadn't improved in terms of performance as a hero at all since the starting. And apart from that, his foolishness almost created a crisis in their relationship with elves. Then he even attempted to flee despite having an obligation to report the whole incident. Therefore, the king ordered Allan to be branded with a mark of a criminal and live with that mark forever. Allan exclaimed he won't let himself be called a criminal, that's just ridiculous, but the soldiers carried him away from there to mark him. Now the king came to Ishua, who handled the whole matter splendidly, so he asked him if there's anything he wanted. Ishua didn't feel like deserving such praise, and he claimed to have already received enough reward from the guild. The prime minister suggested why don't they give Ishua a domain and a title. The king liked the suggestion, but Ishua thought it would be too much to become an aristocrat. Arya told him it was a really big deal for a commoner to be promoted to an aristocrat, but Ishua just turned it down and said he was fine with being appreciated, that's all. His decision surprised them all, and he continued that it was surely an honor to be acknowledged so much by the king. But he was an adventurer and wished to continue striving to reach greater heights. So right now he would like to travel with everyone more than anything. The king respected his feelings and wished Ishua all the best in his future journeys. Diana then asked Lillian what was she going to do now. Would she like to travel with just 2 of them again, or would she form a party with Ishua now? Lillian thought this was finally her chance to join Ishua, so she called him out hesitantly. But before her voice could reach him, Mythia went ahead and requested Ishua to take her and Riduru into his party. Lillian lost her chance, while Ishua asked them if they really wanted to go with him and Arya so much, since they could get into any party with their skills. But Mythia and Riduru trusted him more than anyone, and they had fun around him. Ishua told them they were exaggerating it, and he would love to have them at the party anyway. Diana pushed Lillian to go and say it as well, after which Lillian went ahead and asked Ishua to include her in his party as well. Ishua and others were kinda surprised by hearing that, and Diana knew Lillian sounded like a little child asking to play house. Ishua asked her if she really wants that, because she has managed to defeat one of 4 heavenly demons on her own, so she should be skilled enough to recruit people in her party instead. Diana asked him what he was saying, reminding him that at an elf village, they wouldn't have been much help by themselves and needed help from skilled people like them to move forward, which wasn't easy to find. He looked to Arya for her opinion. She trusted Lillian was an amazing person and a hero, unlike Allan, so she wanted to travel with her as well. Ishua came to his decision and went over to Lillian to request her to take him and his party members into her party. Lillian was startled. It was opposite of what she wanted. She wanted to join his party instead. But Ishua didn't want to disrespect the hero, who deserves to be the party leader unconditionally. Lillian was nervous hearing this, and she asked Diana what she should do. Diana replied if that's what Ishua wishes, they should go along with it since either way they'll be traveling together. Now that they formed a party together, Ishua recalled everyone's name and their roles in the party, confirming the formation of a new hero party that will defeat the Demon Lord. Meanwhile, in the Demon Lord's castle, Ifrit suggested they should have pushed at the front of the swarm. While Undine, another one of 4 heavenly demons, stated if Ifrit had gone there, he would have gotten defeated yet again by the hero Lillian. Ifrit teased her plan wasn't so perfect either this time, which she didn't expect to fail either. Then Sylphie, a small butterfly-like demon, said the strategy to send miasma to the elf village and wipe it out wasn't bad itself. And the 4th demon, Gnome, believed his mutated ogre king should have been strong enough to defeat that little hero. The 4 of them realized one thing: their most troublesome enemy wasn't the hero, but Ishua, who had cheat-like abilities. Lastly, the Demon Lord spoke up, questioning if it was even possible for a human to have that much mana reserves in the first place. Undine confirmed that Ishua's mana reserves, combined with his extraordinary mana control, were truly monstrous, and now it's become more problematic since he teamed up with hero Lillian. Ifrit mentioned they don't have a choice but to be direct instead of pulling tricks, and the Demon Lord agreed with that. The demons waited for Demon Lord to make a decision. As the Demon Lord explained, from now on, they would be fighting head-on, but not in a way that'll waste their strength. Instead, they would have a fellow human hero fight them. Undine was confused where they could find a hero willing to cooperate with demons like them, to which Demon Lord already had the answer, and he showed that hero to them. It was none other than Allan, who was struggling to meet ends and find quests, ever since he got branded with a criminal mark. He hated Ishua for his whole existence, blaming him for everything that happened to him. And now the Demon Lord planned to bring the fallen hero to their side. Meanwhile, Ishua and others were traveling on a carriage, and Lillian formally told him when they were near Amdia's territory. Ishua asked her to be informal since they were in the same party now. Lillian couldn't get used to it, and he tried the same with Mythia and Riduru, who were hung up on addressing him formally as well. He recalled it's been a week since they formed their new party, and currently they were on their first quest, to transport White Dew Elixir to Amdia's territory. Apparently, Lord Amdia was the same noble that Mythia and Riduru met earlier. She told him they helped a carriage that time, which was transporting the same White Dew Elixir even then. After that, they went to the Lord's mansion to escort the carriage. When they arrived there, they found people suffering from an unknown illness, and at the time, it was the Lord's daughter and a few servants. Now, the fact that they need so much more means there are more sick people there. He was concerned about people there, so he told the coachman to hurry. Diana, who was walking outside for their safety, let them know when they reached the Lord's mansion, and on their arrival, Lord Amdia himself came to the entrance to greet them. He was glad to see Mythia and Riduru again, and Mythia didn't expect they would come back here so soon. Mythia was glad to see Lord's daughter seem to be doing well, but the fact he still needs a large amount of elixir means there are more sick people. Amdia said strange diseases have become widespread in their territory, and the doctors have been unable to determine the cause of it. The only thing that worked on it was the highest-ranked healing potion, White Dew Elixir. Riduru understood now why the number of quests for gathering Ringersu herbs was rising recently. Ishua assured Lord Amdia they would collect more herbs and elixir from neighboring territories and bring them here, but Lillian didn't think that would solve the situation. Ishua listened to her, as she asked Lord Amdia to let them investigate this strange disease. Lord Amdia didn't think of asking their help for that, and later, Lillian apologized to Ishua for taking on the investigation, when their main quest was to deliver elixirs. Ishua didn't mind it at all, and he figured they would find the cause of this disease while transporting elixir to more villages. He didn't think of investigating the source of this disease before, and he was thankful that Lillian suggested it. He believed she was truly acting like a hero, so he'll trust in her judgments. Lillian was moved by his belief in her, but then he asked her to call him just Ishua informally. She told him it's impossible for the time being. Then Arya asked Lillian why she wanted to investigate in the first place. Lillian replied that after she defeated Ifrit, he mentioned something like Undine had a sinister plan in the process, which would surely bring humans to their places. Lillian was surprised when she heard that, and Ifrit was almost about to reveal the plan, but he shut his mouth to make sure they wouldn't know that they were planning to swarm the world tree with monsters and wipe out the elf village. After that, Ifrit just left through a teleportation spell. Ishua, Arya, and Lillian were concerned something bad could be unfolding right now, unaware that they already resolved that situation. Soon they arrived at the next village, and Lillian told them to start unloading stuff. The coachmen thought they were a weird party to think they would not only work on their quest, but also start investigating the source of the problem when they could have waited, and the reward of the transport quest would have increased over time. Mythia remarked that it was a clever trick, then Ishua reminded her not to think like that. Mythia claimed she was just joking, then Ishua told her it's relieving to see they have a good-natured leader in their party, even more than him. Now they started distributing the elixirs and also investigating the source of disease while they're at it. The doctor in charge of patients here told them they have kept the patients in a hut which was built in a hurry, and when they arrived there, many patients were lying with painful expressions on their faces. Lillian and others were concerned after seeing the number of patients was just too much. The doctor told them there were more patients in other similar huts, totaling about 100 people. And since the cause was still unknown, they could only keep casting healing magic and leave the rest to the patient's immune system. For now, they were glad to have at least a working cure for the sickness, the white dew elixir, but it couldn't be supplied enough to meet the number of patients who need it. Ishua thought this was out of his area of expertise, but he wanted to help out somehow like Lillian did by asking for investigation. He asked if he could examine the patient's condition, and the doctor didn't mind at all. He was honored to have the help of a hero who defeated one of 4 heavenly demons, and also the mana porter who saved the world tree. Ishua went to a patient and touched his forehead to examine his body, to find out if this patient was sickened by the demon lord's scheme. After observing him, Ishua found something out of place, and told everyone that the patient's mana balance was out of order, which was making them sick. The doctor wasn't very sure what he meant, so Ishua explained that this guy here has an extremely low amount of dark mana. Everyone was born with a mana balance as foundation, consisting of little of every mana attribute, so if one of them were thrown off balance, the person would get sick. The doctor was amazed Ishua could sense mana flow that sensitively by just touching a person. Then Ishua claimed he might be able to adjust the mana balance as well. He took some seconds and the sick patient suddenly felt all better, as if he was never sick. The patient's mother was happy to see her son all healthy again, and the doctor recalled it was one of white dew elixir's functions to fix mana balance in the body. Ishua also examined other patients and they had the same symptoms. The doctor never heard of a person being able to not only transfer mana, but also mana of every attribute at will. Ishua decided to help everyone one by one, while Arya casted healing magic to alleviate their pain until then. She casted healing magic for the whole building, and the doctor was witnessing multiple wonders before his eyes. Ritteru also decided to help prepare the elixir. Lillian decided to investigate the village, since the people not only were sick, but specifically sick from lack of dark mana. Diana and Mythia went to ask the villagers for advice. Ishua was glad to see everyone already found their roles and doing their best to help out. In that case, he also got to work on his part as well. After a while, the village chief was helping out with the rest of the staff. When he saw Ishua come out from the hut, he asked him how the situation was and if he found anything. Ishua told him the only problem they had now was that even the patients who recovered just now wanted to help them. Arya was glad they seemed to be fine now. The villagers thought this was truly a miracle. They cheered with Ishua's name and can't believe they got to become witnesses of a new legend. Ishua told them they were exaggerating it. It was thanks to everyone's help it was possible. Just then, Lillian returned from the investigation, and she told everyone that she found an important clue. Everyone became hopeful at her claim, and they started to think Ishua was their leader. Ishua corrected them Lillian was the leader, and he noticed in the people cheering for them there were even members of their party. Meanwhile, outside the village, some people with mark of criminals on their faces were preparing for some scheme. And they told the newcomer to do his first work without fail and sell medicines to the village over there when they were suffering from a disease. The newcomer asked them why, and moreover these medicines were all fake ones with strong side effects. The criminal told the newbie to just accept his new life as a criminal, and the guy turned out to be Allan, the former hero. After Allan was branded as a criminal, he tried to take quests in the Nabish town, but he wasn't allowed to take even E-rank quests. The receptionist made it clear that he could only take leftover quests since he had a mark of the criminal. Allan damned it, and this way he couldn't even afford to take any good-paying quests. He thought it was all Ishua's fault, and at this rate, he wouldn't be able to pay for even his stay at the inn. Right then, he was approached by some criminal, calling him out as a former hero. Allan asked the guy who he was, but the guy came straight to matter and told him they brought a very suitable quest for him. Allan recognized those guys were actually people from the criminal guild, and he told them to get off. He hadn't sunk that low to join the criminal guild. The criminals offered him good food that Allan couldn't resist. Since Allan was indeed hungry, he gave in to temptation and set it clear that he would decide whether to accept the quest or not after hearing them out. When he was eating in the carriage, the criminal then told him to eat outside the carriage since he was tasked to protect the carriage. Allan got out of the carriage after eating in a hurry, and he damned it all again, having to work with the criminal guild. He thought this would be an only one-time thing, and he would think about his life after getting some money from this quest. He then asked others what was in the cargo. They told him it was medicine that they plan on selling to a village with a disease spread there and profit off them. Allan thought at first it was a legitimate job, until the criminal told him these medicines were called Phoenix pills, which have incredible effects right after use and make people think they are all fine now. But after some time, they would suffer mental instability and extreme headaches. Just possession of this medicine was considered a crime in the kingdom. And to think Allan was helping them transporting it, his last ounce of humanity made him feel like quitting the quest from here. But then the criminals reminded him that he already ate a lot of food, and even heard of their plan, so they can't let him get off that easily if he wanted to leave. Allan could feel the danger now if he tried to leave. Then criminals told him not to worry, they would just sell the meds and head to the next village by the time side effects show up. Allan realized these guys were true scum and he didn't want to be like them. But when they arrived near the village, they tasked Allan to go there and sell these medicines. Thus, Allan was forced to visit the village and he advertised having medicines from the royal capital which could cure all diseases. The villager who heard him went silent for a moment, and Allan thought who would believe such a shady claim like that. The villager then started looking at him with admiration, to think there was such a medicine in the royal capital, and this man here went through the trouble of transporting them all the way here. The villager guided him into the village, and Allan couldn't believe it really worked. Inside the village, he noticed there was a crowd gathered in the center, and he had a bad feeling about this. The villager told him that a party of heroes visited the village a while ago and cured everyone, and Allan was starting to see a strange pattern now. And just like always, the one in the middle of all this was none other than Ishua. People treated him well even here. There were also more women gathered around him, which was natural, and if he keeps gaining fame like that, Allan knows Ishua would go down in history for sure. And here he was branded as a criminal, forced to sell fake medicines. Allan then raised his hand and shouted he got a cure-all medicine here, which was much cheaper than white dew elixir. Ishua recognized Allan at first glance and asked him where he got that medicine. The village doctor turned to ask Sage what's going on, and Allan was scared when he remembered that a sage was very knowledgeable about medicines. So she would know it right away. Ritteru told everyone that's a phoenix pill right there, which was a dangerous drug that has severe side effects, and just having one of that was a crime itself. Allan thought this was the end, and what followed next was Ishua's surprised reaction to think Allan would involve himself in that sort of thing. Lillian couldn't ignore this as a hero, and since Allan was already done for, he resorted to taking the little girl standing nearby as hostage and shouted it's all happening because of that Mana Porter. Ishua shouted what the hell was he doing, but Allan told everyone to stay away if they want this child to be safe. Lillian pointed out how low the former hero, who's now a criminal, had fallen, then she casted her fantasy world magic to trap Allan inside her virtual space. Allan was caught off guard by that, and he realized that he even lost that child he took in as hostage. He shouted what the hell was happening. Lillian told him she just transported him into a space of her imagination, and he won't be able to take any hostage here. Allan requested them to wait and hear him out first, but he realized they weren't going to trust a single word from him, as they were looking at him with hateful eyes. Allan asked them if they really thought Allan would join the criminal guild because he wanted to, but the stares of distrust continued. So Allan tried to beg them for another chance, and he'll rise up the ranks right away this time. They still keep looking at him with disappointment, and Allan hated it to the extremes, so he decided to fight them with the help of a holy sword. Ishua knew it could get troublesome, so he quickly casted mana field around them, and Allan found himself trapped in another barrier-like thing. Suddenly, Allan started feeling headaches, which were caused by excessive mana concentration around them. Ishua had tried to get Allan to train in this mana field in the past, but since he never trained, he couldn't stand the heavy mana density and thus got a headache. Allan couldn't do anything in this state, and to make him conscious, Ishua was about to pull all mana from Allan's body. Allan tried to get Ishua to stop, but it was already too late for Allan as he fell unconscious. Troops were then called to bring Allan back to the royal capital, while Ishua and others would firstly work on investigating here. The soldiers apprehended Allan and took him away, while Ishua was feeling just sad to think Allan would sell illegal drugs while wearing the mark of a criminal. He wonders if Allan would get executed this time, which makes him feel even sadder. Arya told him it's not his fault, then Diana asked Lillian what clue she found about the disease. Lillian told them there was a magic circle, cleverly hidden around the well, which transferred the dark mana. Ishua immediately asked everyone to stay away. Lillian told him there were more of these magic circles in the well and some other places around the village as well. Ishua realized the whole incident and disease was artificially caused by someone on purpose. Meanwhile, the criminals were keeping an eye on Allan, and they saw him getting caught so easily on his first task. Then they asked their client if this was all she wanted. She smirked, which means it's a yes, and now the criminals wanted their reward for the job. She removed the cloak and the guys thought she was going to pay with her body instead of money, but little did they know she was a demon, so she just killed them once they weren't of use to her anymore. She rewarded them with deaths for doing her job, after which she wondered if the former hero Allan, who had suffered so much, would finally turn against humanity. After that, they went to the source of that disease and arrived at the place where the Calamity Dragon was said to be sleeping. 1 week ago, Ishua and the party examined the magic circles and figured there were more of them in other villages and towns. Lillian mentioned this thing only seemed to target those with low magical powers, and they wondered where this mana was gathering. It was questionable if this was part of the Demon Lord's schemes, and for now, Ishua figured he should dispel them all at once to ensure the safety of everyone. They thought it would take a considerable amount of time to remove all the magic circles in the territory. Ritteru has a theory that it should have a core mechanism that manages the stolen mana, and regardless of what it's for, it should be gathered in one place. So if they destroy that center, they could solve the situation without taking a long time. Ishua figured he could locate the center with his mana sensing, for which he also added some changes to the magic circle. It was unexpected to think he could do something that magic experts find hard themselves and alter it while it was still in use. Ishua thought it's necessary to do it like that to avoid the perpetrators from knowing that they got reverse-tracked. He explained the whole process of how it worked, but they didn't understand a single thing he was speaking about and just knew they could count on him. Ishua started slowly pouring his mana into the magic circle in little amounts, and from his perspective, it was like becoming the mana itself and being able to see where he was circulating. He noticed the mana flow converged at one point where an incredible amount of mana could be sensed, and that destination was somewhere around the mountains where the water sources come from. He asked others to quickly bring him a map. Then he marked a cross on it, stating there should be a large cave at the foot of this mountain, where all the mana was being gathered. Lillian was shocked to see that place, because she heard the legend of White-Scaled Dragon took place there. The White-Scaled Dragon was also known as a disaster dragon, and the name pretty much explains itself how devastating the dragon was described in the legend. Ishua and others didn't waste time and arrived at the place, where they found the disaster dragon's cavern, and Ishua was astounded to think such a large amount of mana would be hidden so neatly like this. He sensed traps ahead of them and warned others about them, and they were glad to have him here to sense them. Mythia stated that the disaster dragon was a dragon that appeared in fairy tales and was said to have destroyed many countries, and also many heroes have tried hard to seal it away in the past. Lillian stated that this place was originally designated as an A-ranked dungeon, and one day, a party coincidentally happened to have reached the very end and found the disaster dragon sleeping deep within. Since then, the cavern's entrance was closed off by a large boulder, but now, it seems someone removed the boulder and opened the cave on purpose. Ishua was feeling assurance to have a hero who got access to secret information of the nation, which makes things pretty interesting as a hero's party member. Lillian added that the fact that someone was sending a huge amount of dark mana to this place could very well mean that someone was trying to awaken the disaster dragon. She knew if they reported it to the king, he would immediately send the royal army here, but it would take up a long time and the dragon would probably already be awakened by them. So they needed to act quickly and prevent the awakening of the disaster dragon. However, Mythia was concerned since this place was supposed to be in a ranked dungeon, so they were sure to encounter strong monsters here. She couldn't forget her last bad experience in an ranked dungeon where she almost died. Eventually, the party ran into monsters, and Mythia took the lead as vanguard to clear the way, while others followed after her. Ishua was amazed they didn't need mana recovery at all when they were fighting as a team, and could keep moving forward while strategically conserving their mana. Ritteru noticed that mana was split into two paths ahead, which should be a trap to confuse the intruders. Lillian took the responsibility from here and used the skill, mapping, which gave her a glimpse of her surroundings a little. She told everyone to take the right. After following that path, Arya noticed the map and asked what the dots were on it. She told them it was the presence of something ahead, and whenever she sensed any items or treasures around them, she could just put her hand into the map and get the items without going there. It was a totally cheat-level skill which makes a hero so broken. Mythia remarked her last time experience in a ranked dungeon was tough, but compared to that, it feels surprisingly easier now with their current party. They eventually arrived at the innermost part of the dungeon and opened the gates, being cautious of whatever they would come across behind that door. Suddenly, they smelled something bad from inside like rotten meat, and they found out the dead dragon's corpse was being used as a base of experiment by some shady guy. Ishua and the gang noticed that the dragon was rotting away. Don't they think it should be a danger to them? But then the leader of the shady guys shouted at Ishua and his party for intruding this place. Ishua was surprised that those guys were humans, and yet doing something so dangerous for humanity like that. Lillian introduced herself and exclaimed she reached here after investigating a disease. The humans there recognized Lillian as the one who defeated their master Ifrit, so that means these intruders were enemies of the Demon Lord. Mythia shouted those guys were Demon Lord's followers, and they must be from the Chaos Divine Guide Society. It was a bunch of crazy religions that worshipped the Demon Lord, and they believed humanity could only be saved by dying. Lillian questioned the man if they were doing all this on orders of the Demon Lord, to which the man replied they have never met the Demon Lord before, but if they managed to revive the disaster dragon, he would surely come to recognize them. Ishua couldn't believe these guys were doing all this, just to be recognized by the Demon Lord, even though many people were hurt by their methods. Now, the cult guys won't let even the hero party get in their way, so they began attacking them, and Lillian ordered everyone to capture those humans without killing them. The human reminded them they also came here after conquering this dungeon, so they won't go down that easily. But then Mythia defeated one of them within a second, which shattered their confidence, and others were also overwhelmingly stronger than the cult guys, leading to some of them being captured right away. The cult leader couldn't believe they were being overwhelmed, and he quickly began to switch to a backup plan and revive the disaster dragon in the incomplete state. Lillian grieves to stop him, but the cult bastard just forces his way into reviving the disaster dragon even if it could cost him his life. Suddenly, the whole place began to shake violently, and the concentration of dark mana went up rapidly around the body of the disaster dragon. The next moment, they felt tremors around the whole area, as the cult bastard got successful in waking up the disaster dragon. The dragon also opened its terrifying eyes and unleashed a dragon breath, powerful enough to pierce a hole through the whole mountain. Ishua and others suddenly felt like they were outside the cave, while the reality was that the ceiling was destroyed by that dragon breath in a matter of seconds. They were terrified after witnessing the scale of danger that the disaster dragon was, and to think this dragon could wipe out territories and countries with his breath means it should be at least an S-ranked monster. The cult guy was shaking in his boots in face of true calamity as the disaster dragon awakened and emitted a gust of intimidation, catching everyone off guard. They were still overwhelmed by how easily the dragon wiped out the entire ceiling of the cave. It seemed that another one of breath attacks was coming next. However, the calamity dragon's right arm fell off as it charged and unleashed the dragon breath, which was shot very close to the place where Ishua and others were standing. This dragon breath was so strong it annihilated half a mountain, which was dozens of kilometers away. Diana was frozen at the sight of destruction before their eyes, and to think they survived it only because the dragon lost its balance since its body was still incomplete. Ishua noticed the cult guys and told Lillian to isolate them and the dragon from the rest area. She casted the fantasy world around them, bringing only the Calamity Dragon and party members inside. Diana never imagined she would get to face the Calamity Dragon from Legends one day, and now they could not afford to hold back even a little, because one mistake could kill them. Lillian supercharged Diana's sword, and she went and landed a clean strike across the dragon's body diagonally. Ritteru followed up with her strongest lightning spell and landed a direct hit at the Calamity Dragon. Mythia also unleashed her strongest move, Grim Lancer, with her magic sword, and at this point, they wonder if they landed any damage on that thing. However, when the dust settled down, Diana was shocked when she saw that the dragon was perfectly unharmed, which means this dragon was way out of their leagues, and Diana protected others from the dragon's claw. The dragon broke the fantasy world's surface a bit, which was Lillian's first time seeing that happen, which goes on to show just how overwhelmingly powerful the dragon was. Ishua told everyone that even a graze from that kind of attack would mean an instant death for them, while their attacks failed to deal any damage. Lillian was trying to figure out ways to fight that thing, then Saint Arya unleashed her strongest move, Holy Nova, at the dragon, and surprisingly she managed to pierce a hole in the side of the Calamity dragon's body. They were excited to see they got something that works even against that Calamity, and Ishua figured it must be because Saint's light magic was the total opposite of the dark mana-fueled dragon. But then Arya pointed out the dragon was regenerating right away, which made the situation more complicated. Diana asked Ishua can't he try to purify the dark mana like he did earlier, to which he replied it won't be possible, given how much dark mana was poured into the dragon's body. And the fact that something could kill them instantly leaves no room for them even getting close to it and trying anything like that. Everyone thought they didn't have a hope left in that case, but Ishua didn't think so, as he pointed out if the dragon had recovered fully, that might have been the case. But if Arya's attacks were working on it, they might be able to manage somehow. Ishua then told everyone that he had a plan, but it would be very risky and he needed them to trust him completely. They agreed to the plan even before he explained it, since they knew they could trust Ishua and the whole party revolved around him. So they don't have to think twice and trusting their lives to Ishua. Ishua was moved to hear them saying that, and he decided to do his best in that case and asked everyone to hit him with their strongest magic attacks. This came out unexpectedly for everyone, and after he explained the whole plan while they distracted the dragon, everyone was on board with the plan and Diana and Lillian needed to draw the dragon's attention for a bit longer. Meanwhile, Arya asked him if he was really sure about it, and after he confirmed, Arya charged Holy Nova, Riduru charged Thunder Magic, and Mythia charged Grim Lancer all at once and shot their attacks at Ishua. Ishua was nervous because any one of these three attacks could kill him instantly, but he needed to do it, because his plan was to transform the attribute of the attacks. He never tried it before, but he knows it could be done. Riduru, being a sage, knows it was possible. But even if one manages to transform the attribute of a magic spell, the conversion rate turns out to be significantly low. Ishua claimed he came up with a way recently that could keep the conversion rate 100%, which was just shocking for everyone as they know it doesn't work like that. But Ishua developed a method of his own to turn everyone's magic into holy magic, which would help them land a stronger and more effective hit at the Calamity Dragon. So they realized unless they kill the dragon in one strike instantly, their plan could fail. Ishua told them if he fails and dies, they should retreat for a while and wait for the king's army to arrive. But Arya shouted there was no way she would even let him think of things like that, and she requested him not to die. Ishua knew if something happened to him, she would be heartbroken. Now in the present, Ishua prepared himself to use the Holy Nova as a base, so he would have to take control of it first. Ishua casted magic spells to analyze Arya's Holy Nova, and since he was very familiar with her attacks, he analyzed it instantly and controlled it. Riduru's Thunder attack was next, and Ishua wasn't that familiar with her lightning spell, so it took him a few seconds more than Holy Nova. Riduru was amazed he managed to transform her lightning spell into a holy attribute, and now he had one more to handle, Mythia's Cursed Sword attack. He has taken care of her sword for a long time, but never fully analyzed it before, so now he has to be really focused if he wants to control it. Ishua realized he might not be able to make it in time. Others saw him standing there until the moment the attacks reached him first. While they were concerned about Ishua, he realized that he would have to cast Mana Field to slow down the attacks and buy him some time, even if it's a second. And during that time, he decided to pull off another crazy spell to save his life. While they thought Ishua was attacked by Grim Lancer, Arya shouted his name out of worry. But when the dust cleared away, it turned out he managed to analyze the Grim Lancer as well and combined the all three attacks successfully into one magic sphere. Ishua stabilized the magic orb, and Riduru realized he casted Mana Field in time. Ishua told them Mana Field could also bend rules of space-time a bit, and they were speechless to hear that he could create a subspace where time slows down. Arya mentioned the last mage that could control time was hundreds of years ago, and the only thing left now was for Ishua to launch the magic attack. Just then, the Calamity Dragon noticed the magic sphere in Ishua's hand and turned to attack him, knowing he was planning something dangerous. They had to divert the dragon's attention away from Ishua, so Mythia tried to attack the dragon from the side with a sword, while Diana attacked in the leg. But they were damned because their attacks still wouldn't cause any damage at all. Just then, Arya launched Holy Nova and hit the dragon's left wing. Arya managed to get the attention of the Calamity Dragon, and she told him to do it now. Ishua launched the boosted Holy Nova at the dragon, and the dragon also launched a Dragon Breath to counter his attack. Riduru remarked it's bad. At this rate, their attack would be nullified. Ishua was damned their efforts would go to waste, but turned out he was just joking, as he used his control over that magic power and enchanted the sword Saint Diana's sword with it. She swung down the powerful blade containing holy power inside it. And this was originally the same plan they made, where Ishua would launch the boosted Holy Nova, and when the dragon notices them, he would enchant Diana's sword with it, and she would deal the finishing blow. Diana prepared to take on the charge for the final blow, and she split the Calamity Dragon into two pieces from the middle. A huge explosion occurred there, and the Holy Dragon was finally defeated, but while all the girls jumped in joy for their victory, Ishua can't exactly be happy just yet, because he now has to find a way to dodge this incoming dragon's wreath at him. Everyone was worried about him when they noticed, and Ishua forgot he should have also thought about his defense in that flawless plan to take down the dragon. Ishua brainstormed how he could survive this, and recalled a distant memory from a class when a teacher explained that there were many things which were out of norm for humans. One such thing was teleportation magic. Back then, Ishua believed she was right and nobody could do it. Now that he has mastery of magic control, he wanted to give it a try and casted a huge mana field around himself. The density of this field was thicker than anything he casted until now. In this space, he has increased chances of bending space itself. Eventually, he managed to open a rift in space and threw himself into it. After that, Ishua found himself in a space-time rift, inside which the whole world was beyond casuality, and if he got lost here, he would never be able to return to his original world. He focused real hard and thought the place he must return to was Arya. He wanted to reach her no matter what, and his strong desire allowed him to find the exit he was looking for. Meanwhile, everyone else outside was worried about him, since the dragon's breath went through the place Ishua was at. Lillian shouted his name and tried to find him, but there was no trace of him left behind at all. Lillian began to cry, thinking that they lost him. Then the next moment, Ishua fell upon Arya out of nowhere behind. Ishua was having a headache for a moment, until he saw Arya and was happy to see her being all right. He told her that he used her as a marker for this world, but she didn't care and hugged him because she was really scared there. Meanwhile, Lillian was amazed, wondering how did he manage to survive that, because it shouldn't be possible, giving that dragon's breath annihilated that area for real. Ritteru stated only teleportation could make sense in this situation, and according to modern magic theory, teleportation and time slip-up should be possible. Ishua mentioned after he tried doing teleportation on the spot, he realized they don't really have to treat space and time differently, and they mean exactly the same thing. Ritteru told him that humanity wasn't ready for such a revelation yet, and even though the theory turned out to be true, only someone with as much magical power as Ishua could do it. Mythia then told them to drop the complicated talks for now, and told them to focus more on the fact that they actually fought and won against the legendary Calamity Dragon. Lillian told them they should return to the castle now, and a few days later, they arrived at the royal capital and reported everything that went down to the king. The king's jaw dropped wide open when he heard they defeated the Calamity Dragon with only Lillian and Ishua's party. The king mentioned that even in the old tales, only 100 gathered heroes could achieve the feat to seal the dragon, and to think they defeated it was much more shocking and amazing. Ishua replied it wasn't completely resurrected yet, but the king told them it doesn't matter since they wiped out a big threat from the land for forever. The prime minister suggested at this point they should make a statue of Ishua and others in the center of the plaza. He even called for preparations to be made for it right away. The king announced a celebration today, then Ishua mentioned he wanted to ask the king something. The king asked him happily what was it. Ishua mentioned Ishua should have arrived here, now what happened to him. The king and prime minister's expression grew tense, and he didn't have any good news related to that, worrying Ishua and the party about what could have happened now. The king then asked one of the soldiers to hand the report to Ishua. After Ishua received the report, he learned that Allan had become a wanted man now. He asked the king what's the meaning of this, and the king told him the whole story of what happened. Ishua then headed out to the place where he heard the incident happened, and he can't believe a stampede of monsters happened so close to the royal capital. The soldier told him the reports were true, and he was also one of those who were transporting Allan. While they were transporting him, Allan would repeatedly try to persuade them to release him and make it look like he died and let him get away. He reasoned that if the word got out that a former hero had sided with the criminal guild, the other hero's credibility would fall as well, and it won't be good for anyone. But the soldier James didn't dare even consider releasing Allan, and right then someone told the captain there was something on the road ahead of them. James looked ahead and also saw some figures approaching them, and when he looked at them closely, he realized they were actually a horde of monsters, running straight towards them. He quickly ordered one of their men to rush to the city from behind them and inform them of what's happening here, while he and the rest of them would stall the monsters here. Allan found the whole situation very odd, to think a monster outbreak could take place right when he was being carried after arrest. He thought his luck sucks for real, until he realized this could be an opportunity for him to escape. He called James and told him to untie him, claiming he wanted to fight the monsters as well. James was suspicious that Allan was just trying to escape, but Allan claimed he was still a former hero and didn't want to die in a place like this. James wasn't considering it, until Allan pressed him further a couple of times, and James thought it couldn't be helped now. He released the shackles on Allan and told everyone to make sure monsters won't attack the carriage. But Allan behind smirked now that he was finally free. When James turned to give Allan command to take the left, James was suddenly attacked by Allan out of nowhere and he made his escape, calling the soldier foolish. Allan also took the mana potions they had as he walked away, leaving the soldiers to die in the face of the monster horde. Ishua found it disgusting when he heard what Allan did. James was feeling guilty for believing Allan in the first place. Arya understood now what led to Allan becoming a wanted person, and to think he used to be a hero just looks pathetic. Then James mentioned something more surprising happened right after Allan fled, because the monsters suddenly stopped attacking and retreated. Diana thought it was just like the stampede at the elf village, when all the monsters simply stopped all of a sudden and retreated. She thought the monsters' movements then and now were strangely well coordinated. Then a soldier brought a person who witnessed what happened here. Ishua asked the villager what happened here on that day, to which he replied that he ran into a swarm of monsters around the same time, and in the middle of them there was a strange kind of mother, who looked like a gorgeous female with a transparent body like water. Saint Arya thought it must be one of 4 heavenly demons, Undine, and if it was her, it makes sense that monsters behaved in coordination since she could command monsters. The situation feels like Undine saved Allan on purpose, but it doesn't make sense why they would save a hero. Ishua thought about it and figured the situation would get more complicated the more they looked into it, and it would be difficult to trace Allan's movements now. So for now he suggested they should head to Nabish and rest there. Several days later, at Nabish Guild, everyone in the guild with a celebration welcomed Ishua, and he didn't know what happened for them to be like this. They all heard Ishua defeat the legendary Calamity Dragon. In response to that, the Adventurer Guild had decided to promote Ishua and Arya to a rank. Ishua doesn't think it makes any sense since they didn't take many quests, but she mentioned the quest did come when the situations became serious, and Ishua and others just happened to be outside on that quest already. She also promoted Mythia and Riduru to B rank. Ishua can't believe they were already a rank, and they know how hard it was to reach this point. Diana congratulated Ishua and Arya for reaching rank A, and Ishua figured they would have to act like a ranks now to not shame their ranks. But Mythia knows he will take leftover quests again starting tomorrow. Lillian then told everyone that today they would have a big party, and the mention of the party raised Ishua and Diana's ears, and they warned Arya and Lillian not to drink. Just then, an emergency message arrived through a knight from the capital, and he told them an emergency quest was issued. Everyone was startled by the sudden emergency quest, and adventurers were troubled since a lot of emergency quests were happening recently. They wished they could take a break after just having the Calamity Dragon revived and defeated. Then an adventurer read the content of this emergency quest to help defend the Pendulum Fortress from a monster invasion. Lillian recalled that the fortress located in the north was an important defense against the demon realm. They can't afford to lose that strategic base, and considering they need help despite having hundreds of soldiers means the invasion must be insane. There have also been reports of monsters acting in more coordination recently. Adventurers were concerned if the monsters were so many times that even Pendulum Fortress was struggling, they would have to send at least double the firepower to help with the quest. Lillian thought the Demon Lord's plans must be taking place right around now, given the active movements of monsters. Ishua figured if that's the case, it's clear what they'll do. Lillian, as the leader, decided they would take this quest. When others saw that Ishua and his party were taking that quest, despite facing many dangers one after another recently, they were also fired up to take the quest and believed things would be fine if hero Lillian's party were to be there. Ishua and Lillian were amazed that just their presence was enough to motivate others. Diana remarked that it wouldn't be a lie if she claimed that the world was going to be saved by Ishua and Lillian for sure. Several days later, at the gathering place for Pendulum Fortress, the knights welcomed all the adventurers here to help them, and he introduced himself as Lime. Ishua spoke as a representative of all the adventurers, and he was looking forward to working with the knights. Lime thought Ishua mistook him as commander, then he corrected him saying it was someone else. Right then, an old man's voice echoed, shouting at everyone to line up. They can't afford to slack off and behave in an untrained manner. Lime told everyone this old knight here was Anaya, and he was the head of Central Knights.